The sun was already blazing over the Kandahar desert when Specialist David Keller nearly tripped over the body. He'd been walking point, sweat pouring down his back, his rifle tight against his chest. The squad was cutting through a narrow wadi, steep clay banks on both sides, the kind of natural funnel that screamed ambush to anyone with combat experience. But what stopped him cold wasn't enemy fire. It was the boy. The boy couldn't have been older than 11. His chest was sunken, flies crawling across his lips, his small hands still clutching the jagged remains of what looked like a broken walkie-talkie. The radio wasn't military. It was crudely wired, wrapped with electrical tape, but Keller knew immediately what it meant. "IED trigger," he muttered under his breath. "Specialist, move it," barked Sergeant Ramirez from behind, his voice sharp, annoyed, like Keller was holding up the whole world. Keller didn't move. He crouched, eyes fixed on the boy. "Don't touch him," Corporal Dwyer whispered, sidling up beside him. Dwyer's freckles were caked with dust, and his rifle barrel tracked the cliffs above. Could be booby-trapped. Could be the detonator didn't go off. Keller's throat went dry. His first instinct was the same as it had been since he was a kid back in Ohio. Help. That old compulsion to lean down, check for a pulse, try CPR even though it was pointless. But here? In Afghanistan, in this cursed valley? He knew better. Compassion could get you blown into paste. Ramirez stormed up, his own weapon raised. What the hell's the hold-up? He saw the body, hissed between his teeth, then waved the rest of the squad back. "Doc, get eyes on this from a distance. Everyone else, cover the ridgeline. If I see one goat herder with binoculars, light him up." The medic, Private First Class Jenna Holt, slid forward on her belly, careful as a snake. She had a reputation for gallows humor and a mouth sharper than her scalpel, but now she was dead serious. From 10 feet out she scanned the boy with her scope. "No wires I can see," she murmured. "No bulges, no vest. Looks like he was used and tossed. Trigger must have failed." Keller's stomach turned. Used and tossed. An 11-year-old as a disposable bomb switch. That's what war had become. And then, before anyone could blink, the first shot cracked from the cliffs. "Contact. Contact right." Ramirez roared. His voice didn't waver, not even with the supersonic whine of bullets cutting overhead. The squad dove for cover, the wadi suddenly alive with dust and ricochets. Keller threw himself behind a slab of rock, the boy's body inches from his boot. His pulse hammered. Training screamed at him, return fire, suppress, maneuver, but for one raw second he was frozen, staring into those dead eyes. "Specialist, snap the hell out of it," Ramirez bellowed. Keller's hands finally obeyed. He leaned out, sighted the ridge and squeezed. His M4 barked, brass clinking against stone. Shadows moved among the rocks, 3 maybe 4 shooters. Dwyer laid down bursts with his saw, the heavy rattle echoing through the valley. "They're trying to pin us, Sarge. Classic L shape." "Not today they ain't," Ramirez growled. He keyed his radio. "Falcon 6, this is Bravo 2-3. Troops in contact grid." The rest was drowned by the shriek of an RPG. The rocket slammed into the wadi wall, showering the squad with dirt and shards of stone. Keller's ears rang. He coughed, checked himself for missing limbs, then swore as he realized the boy's corpse had been obliterated in the blast. Gone. Just like that. "Ramirez." Holt's voice cut through the chaos. "We got shrapnel in Johnson. He's bleeding out." Keller glanced back. Private Johnson, the youngest of them all, was sprawled on the ground, clutching his thigh as blood spurted in ugly pulses. Holt was already pressing gauze, her hands slick and steady. Choices slammed into Keller's mind all at once. He could keep firing. He could cover Holt. Or he could try to drag Johnson to better cover, risking himself in the open. "Specialist." Ramirez's voice again, iron and fire. "You want to be a hero or a soldier? Pick one." The drag. Keller didn't think. He moved. He bolted from cover, round snapping so close he felt the heat kiss his cheek. He grabbed Johnson under the armpits and hauled, boots skidding in the dust. Johnson screamed, kicked, tried to help, but he was losing too much blood. "Keep pressure, Doc," Keller shouted as he dragged the kid behind the rock. "On it." Holt snarled, jamming a tourniquet tight. Johnson gasped, his eyes wide with shock and pain. "Stay with me, Private," Keller said, his voice low but urgent. "You're not dying today. You hear me? Not on my watch." And for the first time since they'd landed in Afghanistan, Keller realized he meant it. Not some empty motivational line, he meant it with his whole damn soul. Above them, Dwyer and Ramirez kept the enemy's heads down, but ammo was running low. We need out of this kill box. Ramirez barked. Keller, you see a path? Keller peeked over the rock. The wadi bent left about 50 meters ahead. If they could reach that corner, they'd have defilade, cover from the direct line of fire. Left bend, Keller shouted. 50 meters. We sprint or we die here. Ramirez gave a wolf's grin, wild under fire. Then let's earn our paychecks. Smoke out. Grenades popped, white plumes filling the wadi. Move, move, move. The sprint. Keller slung his rifle, threw Johnson over his shoulders in a fireman's carry and ran. His lungs screamed, his legs begged to quit, but adrenaline turned his body into steel. Behind him, the squad pounded forward through the smoke, blind but trusting muscle memory. Bullets cut through the haze. One snapped so close to Keller's ear he felt the burn. He didn't look back. Didn't dare. They crashed around the bend just as another RPG whooshed past, exploding harmlessly against the far wall. The wadi opened into a wider valley, ugly terrain, but at least they weren't sitting ducks. Set perimeter. Ramirez ordered. Dwyer, cover high left. Keller, high right. Holt, keep Johnson alive until birds inbound. Keller dropped Johnson gently, then scrambled up a slope, rifle at the ready. His chest heaved, his whole body shaking from the sprint and the adrenaline dump. He scanned, searching for muzzle flashes. Silence. For a long moment the enemy didn't press. Just silence, like the valley itself was holding its breath. Think they're regrouping? Dwyer called out. Or waiting to see if we call in air, Ramirez answered. His voice was calm, too calm. He'd been here before, seen this dance too many times. Keller's finger twitched on his trigger. He hated the silence more than the shooting. And then Holt's voice broke through. He's crashing. I need evac now. The call. Ramirez grabbed his radio. Falcon 6, this is Bravo 2-3, urgent case vac, over. Static. He tried again, louder. Falcon 6, urgent. We've got a critical casualty. Nothing but the hiss of broken signal. Goddamn valley walls, Ramirez muttered. He looked at Keller. You're our tallest. Climb up, get me a line of sight and make that call. Keller's gut twisted. Climbing meant silhouette. Silhouette meant target. But he didn't argue. He scrambled higher, boots slipping on loose shale, until he reached a jagged ridge. He keyed the handset. Falcon 6, this is Bravo 2-3. Do you copy? Over. This time a voice crackled back. Bravo 2-3, Falcon 6. Send traffic. Relief nearly made him slump, but he forced the words out steady. We have one urgent surgical, massive blood loss. Request medevac at grid 2-5-7-1-3-9. Immediate. Copy. Bird en route. EDA 15 mics. Keller exhaled hard. 15 minutes. A lifetime in combat. He was about to climb down when he saw movement. 3 figures darting between rocks, AKs slung low, circling toward their flank. His blood froze. Ramirez, he shouted. 3 tangos flanking left. The squad erupted into fire again. The choice. It became chaos. Dwyer's saw roared, cutting tracers into the rocks. Holt screamed at Johnson to hold on, her hands drenched in crimson. Ramirez fired methodically, each shot deliberate, precise. Keller saw one insurgent drop, another dive behind a boulder. The third raised his weapon, aiming straight for Holt and Johnson. Time slowed. Keller had one clean shot, but it meant exposing himself fully. If he missed, or if another hidden shooter was waiting, he'd be done. He thought of his sister back home, waiting tables to pay for nursing school. He thought of his father's disappointment when he enlisted. He thought of Johnson gasping on the ground, barely 19. And then he squeezed. The insurgent's head snapped back, body crumpling like a rag doll. Good shot, specialist. Ramirez roared. But Keller didn't feel triumph. He felt the weight. The awful, permanent weight of a life he'd just ended. The scar. The medevac came in hot, rotor wash tearing the valley into a storm of dust. They loaded Johnson onto the stretcher, Holt climbing in with him, shouting over the roar. Don't you dare quit on me, Private. You're gonna owe me a beer when we're stateside, you hear me? Johnson managed a weak grin before the helicopter lifted away. When the dust cleared, silence fell again. The squad was filthy, exhausted, staring at the empty sky. Dwyer broke it first with a laugh that was half hysteria. Jesus, Keller. I thought you froze up back there, then you went full action hero. Where the hell was that in PT this morning, huh? The others chuckled, the kind of laughter soldiers used to keep from breaking. Keller tried to smile, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Holt wasn't there to answer, but he remembered her words from earlier that week. During a different PT session when he joked about her lagging behind. She'd smirked and said, "I've got my excuses, Keller. You don't want to see the scar." Back then he'd laughed. Everyone had. Soldiers always bragged about scars. But after what he'd seen today, after dragging Johnson through hell and watching Holt work with calm precision, he realized something. He did want to see that scar. Not out of curiosity but out of respect. Because every mark, every story carried weight. And some scars weren't for laughter, the long ride back. The Humvee bounced hard over the rutted road, every pothole rattling teeth and spines. Dust seeped through the cracks in the armor like the desert itself was trying to choke them. Inside, the squad sat in silence, each man lost in his own head, still replaying the ambush on loop. Specialist Keller sat by the gunner's hatch, eyes fixed on the horizon but seeing none of it. The smell of burned powder clung to his uniform. His ears still rang from the RPG blast, though the medic back at the FOB had promised the tinnitus would fade. It wasn't the noise that haunted him. It was the boy. The detonator in his hands. The way the blast erased him like he'd never existed. "Hey," Dwyer said, nudging him with an elbow. "You look like you're about to puke in your helmet. You good?" Keller forced a smirk. "I'm peachy. Just enjoying the scenic Afghan countryside." "Scenic?" Dwyer snorted. "Only thing scenic out here is how far camel crap can travel in the wind." The squad chuckled. Even Ramirez cracked the faintest grin. The laughter wasn't real, not fully, but it was better than silence. Soldiers lived on humor the way trucks lived on diesel. Without it, nothing ran. Then the radio crackled. "Bravo 2-3 report status." Ramirez grabbed the handset. "Falcon 6, this is Bravo 2-3. One urgent evac complete, awaiting update on casualty. Squad otherwise green. Returning to FOB." There was a pause, then the voice of Captain Hensley came back. "Roger. Debrief on arrival. And Ramirez, bring Keller with you." Every head turned. Keller blinked. "Me? What the hell for?" "Guess you're famous now," Dwyer said with a grin. "Hero of the day." Keller didn't feel like a hero. He just felt tired. The scar. The sun was dipping low when they finally rolled through the gates of Forward Operating Base Raptor. The place looked like every FOB HESCO barriers, guard towers, the constant buzz of generators, the smell of dust and diesel mixed with chow hall grease. Holt was waiting by the aid station, her uniform spattered with dried blood. She spotted Keller and walked over, pulling off her gloves. "He's alive," she said without preamble. "Johnson. He lost a lot of blood but the surgeons got him stable. He's headed to Germany tonight." Relief hit Keller like a wave. He hadn't realized how much he'd been bracing for the worst. "Damn good work, document." Holt gave him a tired smile. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You dragged him out of that kill box." "I just did what anyone would have done." "Wrong," Holt said flatly. "Not everyone does it. Plenty freeze. You didn't. That's why he's alive." Keller didn't know what to say. For a moment they just stood there in the twilight, the war humming around them. Then Holt glanced at his expression and smirked. "You still thinking about what I said in PT?" It took him a second to remember. Then he chuckled. "Yeah. About your scar. Thought so." Holt glanced around, then tugged the edge of her uniform top aside. Just enough to reveal the thick, jagged line that ran from her collarbone down across her ribs. The skin was puckered, angry even years later. "ID outside Fallujah," she said quietly. 2 tours ago. Took shrapnel from here to here." She traced the line with a finger. "Doc back home said I should have bled out in 5 minutes. Guess I'm too stubborn." Keller stared. The scar wasn't just flesh, it was a story carved into her, deeper than words. Suddenly, his stupid laughter from that morning felt like the dumbest thing he'd ever done. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "Don't be," Holt replied, tugging her top back into place. "Just remember, out here excuses aren't excuses. They're survival. Everyone's carrying something. Some scars you can see. Some you can't." Keller nodded slowly. He understood. For the first time he really understood. Debrief. The debrief was the usual grind. Maps on a table, Captain Hensley asking pointed questions, Ramirez answering with clipped precision. Enemy strength. Contact points. Weapons used. Casualty report. Keller sat stiff in his chair, trying not to fidget. Hensley's gaze flicked to him more than once. Finally, the captain leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Specialist Keller, walk me through your decision to carry Johnson instead of continuing suppression fire." Keller hesitated. He knew the regulation answer. "I followed my training. I acted within unit SOP. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was he hadn't thought. He just acted. I didn't want him to die there, Keller said finally. If I'd kept shooting, maybe we'd have suppressed longer. But Johnson would have bled out. So I dragged him. Hensley studied him for a long moment. Do you think you made the right call? Yes, sir. Even though part of him still wondered. Hensley nodded slowly. So do I. That kind of initiative is what saves lives. But don't mistake luck for skill, specialist. Next time, make damn sure your decision doesn't cost the squad. Yes, sir. Dismissed, Keller stepped into the night air, his chest tight. The captain's words weren't condemnation, but they weren't praise either. They were a warning. A reminder that in war, even right decisions carried weight. The poker game. That night, the squad gathered in the barracks, cramped and sweltering despite the whir of overworked fans. Someone had scrounged a deck of cards, and a poker game sprawled across an ammo crate. Dwyer was in his element, grinning like a shark as he raked in a pile of candy bars and Copenhagen tins, the unofficial currency of the FOB. Ramirez watched with a smirk, nursing a warm Gatorade. Keller sat on his bunk, not really watching the game, lost in thought. Earth to specialist, Dwyer said, tossing a pack of Skittles at him. Buy in. You can't mope all night. Keller caught the pack, raised an eyebrow. This is highway robbery. You're counting cards. Counting cards. Dwyer gasped in mock offense. Sir, I would never. I'm just blessed by the poker gods. Ramirez chuckled. Blessed, huh? More like you cheat with the enthusiasm of a televangelist. The laughter rolled through the room, easing the day's tension. Keller finally cracked a smile and joined in, tossing his Skittles onto the pile. For a few hours, war faded. They were just young men in a crappy barracks, arguing over cards and laughing until their sides hurt. But when lights out came and the FOB settled into restless silence, Keller lay awake staring at the ceiling. The boy. The insurgent he'd shot. Johnson's pale face. Holt's scar. They all swirled together in his head. Sleep never came easy in Afghanistan. Tonight it didn't come at all. The next mission. Morning brought orders. Intel says the same cell that ambushed us is holed up in a compound north of the valley, Ramirez briefed. His tone was clipped, all business. We're going hunting. No screw-ups. No hesitation. The squad geared up, each man sliding back into the ritual of routine. Check mags, rack bolts, adjust armor, sling packs. Holt joined them, her med kit heavier than anyone's rifle. As they rolled out, Keller felt his stomach knot. Yesterday had been defense. Survival. Today would be offense. They weren't waiting to be hit. They were going to hit first. Halfway there, Dwyer leaned over. Bet you $10 we find nothing but goats. Keller smirked despite himself. Goats with RPGs? Don't laugh, Dwyer said. I saw a goat chase a guy once. Scariest damn thing in country. Even Ramirez chuckled at that. Humor again, the lifeline. But as the compound loomed into view, mud brick walls, watchtowers of crumbling stone, Keller's pulse quickened. This wasn't a joke. This was real. Breach. The squad stacked at the gate, rifles ready, hearts pounding. Ramirez gave the signal. The door charge blew, a thunderclap of dust and smoke. Move, move, move. They flooded inside, clearing rooms with practiced precision. Shouts and Dari echoed through the compound, women and children scrambling, terrified. Keller swept left, his rifle tracking corners. Empty rooms. Mats on the floor. A cooking fire still smoldering. Signs of life, but no fighters. Then came the shout from Dwyer. Weapons cache. Got AKs, RPG tubes, and enough ammo to level a block. The room filled with adrenaline. This was the cell. This was proof. But there were no shooters. Just civilians, eyes wide, pressed against the walls. Ramirez's jaw tightened. Intel said armed fighters. This looks like a family compound. Keller's gut churned. He remembered the boy in the wadi. Remembered how family and fighter blurred in this war until nobody knew where one ended and the other began. And then Holt's voice cut in, sharp with urgency. Sarge. Keller. Get over here. They sprinted to her. In the corner of the compound, half buried under a pile of blankets, lay a teenager. Maybe 15. His abdomen was wrapped in crude bandages, soaked with blood. His eyes fluttered, lips cracked. He's been shot, Holt said, already ripping gauze from her kit. And not recently. This is days old. Keller's chest tightened. This wasn't a fighter. They didn't leave their own behind like this. This was someone abandoned. Orders, Sarge? Keller asked quietly. Ramirez stared down at the boy. His face was stone, unreadable. Orders, sir? Keller repeated. Ramirez finally spoke. We take him. He might have intel. But if he slows us down, he left the rest unsaid. The choice now wasn't Ramirez's. It was Keller's. He was closest. He could help carry the boy or he could walk away. And whichever he chose, there would be consequences. The weight of a body. The boy was light, too light. Keller slung him over his shoulder, feeling how fragile he was beneath the blood-soaked bandages. Every step out of the compound felt like walking through mud. Not because of the weight but because of the choice. He could have left the kid there. Nobody would have judged him. Not really. But Holt's eyes had locked on his, and in that half-second of silence Keller had known. If you walk away you'll never forget it. So he carried him. Dwyer muttered as they exited the compound. We came for bad guys and left with a daycare. What's next, Sarge? Adopt a goat? Shut it, Corporal, Ramirez snapped. We're moving. But Keller saw the same tension in Ramirez's jaw. The same doubt. Because war wasn't neat. It wasn't movies where the enemy wore black hats and the good guys wore white. War was kids with detonators, mothers screaming, teenagers bleeding out in the dirt. And every decision carved a scar you couldn't see. Convoy trouble. The squad loaded back into the Humvees. The boy laid across the back seat with Holt hovering over him. She worked with steady hands, pressing new gauze, whispering words the kid couldn't understand but maybe could feel. Keller sat opposite, rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the horizon. The desert stretched endless, featureless. Too open. Too quiet. Halfway back to the FOB, the lead vehicle jolted to a stop. Roadblock, the driver muttered. Ahead, a cluster of rusted cars and debris blocked the road, piled too neatly to be random. "ID," Ramirez said instantly. His voice dropped to that low growl soldiers used when the air got dangerous. Dismount. Eyes up. They spilled from the Humvees, forming a perimeter. Keller's heart hammered as he swept his sector, searching the hills. Nothing moved. No birds, no shepherds, no kids playing soccer. Just silence. Classic setup, Dwyer muttered. Roadblock, kill zone, shooters in the rocks. But the hills stayed empty. Ramirez studied the roadblock, then keyed the radio. Falcon 6, this is Bravo 2-3. Possible IED. Request EOD support, over. Static then, negative Bravo 2-3. No assets available. You're on your own. Keller's stomach sank. Ramirez turned, his gaze falling on Keller. Specialist. You're the one with eagle eyes. Take Dwyer, sweep left ridge. Look for spotters. Don't engage unless you have to. Yes, Sarge. Keller moved out, rifle raised, Dwyer close behind. They climbed the ridge, boots crunching on shale. Every shadow looked like a muzzle flash waiting to happen. Every rock could hide a man. At the top, Keller crouched, scanning through his scope. The valley stretched out before him, empty, barren. The roadblock sat like a tumor in the middle of the road. See anything? Dwyer asked, his voice tight. Nothing. Which is exactly what worries me. The blast. The decision came fast. Ramirez ordered the convoy to backtrack and find another route. Slow but safer. The vehicles turned, engines rumbling. And that's when the world exploded. The IED wasn't in the roadblock. It was buried off to the side, triggered as the last Humvee swung around. The blast ripped the air apart. Fire and dirt engulfed the rear vehicle, flipping it onto its side like a toy. Keller's ears rang. He saw the plume rise, saw shrapnel rain down like metal hail. And then screams. Enemy fire, someone yelled, but no shots came. Just the aftermath. Keller scrambled down the ridge, heart in his throat. The overturned Humvee burned, smoke choking the air. Holt was already there, dragging one of the soldiers free, coughing from the fumes. Keller grabbed another by the vest straps and hauled him clear. Blood smeared his gloves. The man's eyes rolled, half-conscious. Ramirez barked orders, pulling the squad into a defensive circle. But no ambush came. Just the flames, the screams, the chaos. It hit Keller like a gut punch. Sometimes the enemy didn't need to shoot. Sometimes the bomb was enough. Aftermath. 2 men were dead. The driver had been shredded instantly. Another had bled out before Holt could save him. The survivors were burned, broken, dazed. They loaded the bodies and the wounded, the silence inside the Humvees heavier than any armor. Nobody spoke. Not even Dwyer. Back at the FOB, the bodies were zipped into bags and taken away. Holt disappeared into the aid station with the wounded. Ramirez stalked toward the command post, rage simmering under his skin. Keller sat on a bench outside, helmet in his hands. His chest felt hollow. He replayed it again and again. What if he'd spotted something on the ridge? What if he'd pushed harder, searched longer? Don't do that, Holt's voice came, soft but firm. He looked up. She stood there, her sleeves rolled up, dried blood streaked across her arms. Exhaustion etched her face, but her eyes were steady. Don't do what? He asked. Blame yourself. You'll eat yourself alive. That bomb was planted days ago, maybe weeks. Nothing you did today would have changed it. Keller swallowed hard. Tell that to the two guys we just put in bags. Holt sat beside him. For a long time they didn't speak. Just sat in the heavy silence of loss. Finally Holt said, You want to know something stupid? The scar I showed you, she touched her collarbone lightly. I used to think it made me ugly. I hated it. Covered it up all the time. Then one day this old sergeant told me, that scar means you survived something that wanted you dead. That's not ugly. That's proof you fought back. Keller stared at her. For the first time he realized she wasn't just a medic. She was a survivor. A fighter. And maybe, just maybe, he could be one too. The poker deck. That night, the barracks was quieter than usual. The poker deck lay untouched on the ammo crate. Nobody felt like laughing. Until Dwyer finally broke the silence. Keller, you still owe me a candy bar from yesterday. Keller blinked at him. Seriously? After today? Especially after today, Dwyer said. His grin was weak, but it was there. If we stop betting on dumb crap, we let them win. So pay up, specialist. Keller dug into his pack and tossed him a Snickers. Dwyer caught it, ripped it open, and took a huge bite. See? Dwyer mumbled with his mouth full. Victory tastes like peanuts and caramel. For the first time since the blast, the squad laughed. Not long. Not hard. But it was laughter. And sometimes that was enough. Until the next morning, Captain Hensley called them in. His face was grim, eyes shadowed by lack of sleep. The teenager you brought in, he's stable, Hensley said. And he talked. Keller's stomach clenched. He says the cell responsible for the ambush is regrouping in the mountains east of the valley. Bigger than we thought. They've got a commander, call sign the Scorpion. He's planning something large. Maybe targeting convoys. Maybe the FOB itself. Silence settled over the room. The Scorpion? Dwyer repeated. What is this, a Marvel movie? Nobody laughed. Hensley leaned forward. You boys stirred the hornet's nest. Now we've got to finish the job before it finishes us. Pack up. You move out at 0400. Keller felt the words sink into his bones. Bigger fights. Bigger risks. And the teenager they'd carried out of that compound had just changed everything. Keller's night. That night, Keller couldn't sleep. The barracks was filled with snores and restless shifts, but his mind was racing. He walked outside, the desert night cool and quiet. The stars overhead were sharp, endless. For a moment it almost looked like home. He thought of Johnson, now somewhere in Germany. He thought of the boy with the detonator. The teenager in the compound. The two soldiers zipped into bags. And he thought of Holt's scar. He wondered what scars he'd carry home. Physical, emotional, invisible. Would he even make it home? The desert gave no answers. Only silence. But somewhere in the mountains, a man called the Scorpion was waiting. And tomorrow Keller would go hunting. Orders at dawn. On your feet. Sergeant Ramirez's bark cut through the barracks like a whip. The squad groaned, rolling off their bunks in the pitch-black hours before dawn. The air smelled of sweat, canvas, and the bitter tang of instant coffee. Specialist Keller rubbed grit from his eyes, heart already pounding. He knew what today meant. This wasn't another patrol. This was payback. By the time they geared up and shuffled into the briefing tent, Captain Hensley was waiting. The map spread across the table showed the mountains east of the valley, jagged ridges and narrow passes, perfect ground for ambushes. Our source confirms, Hensley began, the Scorpion's fighters are dug into these ridgelines. They've got weapons, comms, and possibly manpads. If they get bold enough, they could hit supply convoys or even aircraft. He jabbed a finger at the map. Your squad will insert here. Sweep the pass. Find the Scorpion's hide. If you get contact, fight through. If you can't, call for fire. Questions? Nobody spoke. Good. You roll in 30. Dismissed. March into the mountains. The trucks dropped them at the edge of the valley. From there, it was boots on dirt. The squad moved in a staggered file, rifles ready, eyes sweeping the ridges. The mountains loomed like teeth, their shadows long in the morning light. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air, the sharper the rocks. Keller's calves burned. Sweat stung his eyes. Hell of a hike for a guy named after a bug, Dwyer muttered, shifting the saw on his shoulder. Focus, Ramirez snapped. But even he looked uneasy. This was terrain that chewed up soldiers and spit out ghosts. Holt trudged along near Keller, her pack heavier than anyone's. She kept her eyes forward, her face set in that calm mask medics wore. Keller glanced at her once, then forced himself to look away. She didn't need comfort. She was comfort just by being steady. First signs. Hours in they found the first sign. Empty ammo crates. Shell casings scattered in the dirt. A burned cooking fire still warm. "They're close," Keller whispered, crouching low. He picked up a casing, rubbing it between his fingers. Fresh. Ramirez raised a fist, signaling halt. The squad melted into cover, eyes scanning every ridge. The silence was suffocating. No goats. No kids. No shepherds. Just the mountains watching them. And then Keller heard it, a faint metallic clink echoing off stone. Not natural. Human. His skin crawled. "Tripwire," he mouthed to Ramirez. The sergeant nodded, eyes narrowing. "Good eyes, specialist. Everyone backtrack. We skirt left." They moved slow, careful. Keller's breath stayed locked in his chest until they passed the wire, barely visible, stretched across the narrow path. An IED sat nestled in the rocks, crude but deadly. "Welcome to the Scorpion's backyard," Dwyer muttered. "Contact in the pass." By midday the sun was brutal. The squad reached a choke point, a pass barely wide enough for 2 men abreast. Steep cliffs on either side. The kind of place that screamed "don't go in there." But there was no other way. "Move," Ramirez ordered, jaw tight. Keller's boots crunched on gravel as he stepped into the pass. Every nerve screamed at him. His rifle swept left, right, up. Nothing. Halfway through the first shot cracked. The bullet sparked off rock inches from Keller's head. He dropped, heart slamming, and the whole pass erupted in fire. "Ambush. Left ridge," Ramirez shouted. The squad dove for cover, but cover was scarce. Bullets shredded the gravel, kicked up dust. Dwyer's saw thundered, spraying tracers into the rocks. Keller squeezed bursts, glimpsed shadows moving above. 2 o'clock, he yelled, cutting down a figure as it leaned out. "Grenade!" Holt screamed. Keller barely rolled before the explosion ripped the ground where he'd been, showering him with stone. His ears rang, chest heaving. This wasn't survival anymore. This was kill or be killed. The push. Pinned in the pass, they had no options. Ramirez made the call. "Assault up the left. Keller, you're with me. Holt, stay alive. Dwyer, cover." They moved. Scrambling up the slope, firing as they climbed. Keller's thighs burned, lungs on fire, but adrenaline drove him. He caught sight of an insurgent reloading and didn't hesitate. One shot, clean. The man crumpled. Ramirez was a force beside him, barking, firing, climbing like a man possessed. Together they crested the ridge. And there he was. A man in black robes, AK slung, eyes cold as stone. The fighters around him shouted in Dari. The Scorpion. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Keller's sights locked on him. His finger hovered. But the Scorpion didn't raise his rifle. He just looked at Keller. A calm, measuring look. Like he knew this wasn't the end. Then smoke erupted. A flashbang tossed by one of the fighters. Keller's vision widened out. By the time it cleared, the Scorpion was gone. Aftermath on the ridge. The firefight raged for another 5 minutes, then broke. The insurgents melted into the rocks, leaving behind bodies and blood trails. Keller crouched, chest heaving, eyes burning. His ears still rang from the blast. Ramirez slammed a fist into the dirt. "Damn it. We had him." Keller said nothing. He replayed that look. Those eyes. The Scorpion had seen him, measured him, and walked away. Not out of fear. Out of patience. Holt climbed up, checking both men for wounds. "You good?" she asked, her hands quick and firm. Keller nodded. "Fine." But inside he wasn't fine. He felt like he'd just looked into the eyes of something endless. Something that wouldn't stop. Discovery. As they regrouped, Dwyer called out from a cave entrance. "Sarge, you're gonna want to see this." They followed him inside. The cave stank of sweat, gun oil, and rot. Stacks of crates lined the walls, ammo, RPGs, mortar shells. Enough firepower to level half the valley. But that wasn't the worst part. At the back, against the wall, sat cages. Inside, terrified Afghan villagers huddled together, their wrists bound. Women, kids, even an old man with a missing leg. Holt gasped. "Dear God." Ramirez's jaw clenched. "This is it. Proof of what he's doing out here." Keller moved to the cages, cutting bindings, handing out canteens. The villagers clutched his hands, eyes wide with desperation and gratitude. One little girl stared at him through the bars, no older than his sister's kid back home. Dirt streaked her cheeks. But her eyes, they were the same eyes as the boy in the wadi. Keller swallowed hard. How many more kids will I see like this? Extraction. They radioed for extraction. It took hours for choppers to arrive, hours of tense waiting with the freed villagers huddled in the cave. When the helicopters finally thundered overhead, dust whipping the ridge, the squad loaded the civilians first. The villagers cried, clung, prayed. As Keller helped lift the little girl aboard, she grabbed his sleeve. She didn't speak English, but the look said enough. Don't let them come back. Keller nodded once. He didn't know if he could keep that promise. But he made it anyway. Back at the FOB. The debrief was chaos. Intel officers swarmed the cave reports, salivating over the weapons cache. Journalists sniffed around, though they were kept out of the loop. But for the squad, it was just exhaustion. They collapsed in the barracks, filthy, bruised, drained. Almost had him, Ramirez muttered again and again. Almost. Dwyer tried to lighten the mood. Hey Keller, if you'd shot faster, maybe we'd be sipping chai with the Scorpion right now. Nobody laughed. Later, when the barracks dimmed, Holt sat across from Keller. Her voice was quiet. You did good today. He shook his head. We let him slip. You saved lives. Those villagers would have been dead by tomorrow. That counts for something. Keller looked at her, at the scar on her chest hidden beneath her uniform. He thought about his own scars forming, scars nobody could see yet. And for the first time he wondered, when this was all over, who would he be? Cliffhanger. 2 days later, a drone spotted movement deep in the mountains. A convoy of trucks loaded with fighters and weapons. At the front, a black-robed figure stood in the open bed, face hidden but unmistakable. The Scorpion. And he wasn't running anymore. He was moving toward them. The warning. The first sign came at dusk. Keller was on tower guard, the desert glowing orange under the falling sun. His M4 rested across his lap as he scanned the horizon. At first, he thought the dark specks in the distance were just birds. But then the dots grew larger, moving in lines, dust clouds rising behind them. Trucks. He keyed his radio. Tower 3 to TOC. I've got movement North Ridge. Multiple vehicles. The reply was instant, tight with alarm. Copy Tower 3. Stay on them. All towers report in. Within minutes, the FOB was alive. Sirens wailed, boots pounded gravel, Humvees roared to life. Soldiers scrambled to fighting positions, loading belts of ammo, checking radios, dragging sandbags. Keller's gut twisted. The Scorpion wasn't hiding anymore. He was coming to the front door. First contact. The first rocket slammed into the outer wall just after dark. The blast lit the night sky, shaking the towers. Dirt and debris rained down. Contact. North wall, someone shouted. The floodlights snapped on, washing the desert in blinding white. Figures darted between trucks and rocks, RPGs on their shoulders, AKs flashing. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Keller brought his rifle up and fired, the recoil punching his shoulder. The air filled with the staccato roar of M240s, the thud of mortars, the scream of rockets. Jesus Christ, it's the whole damn valley out there. Dwyer shouted from the tower beside him, his saw spewing tracers into the night. Shut up and shoot. Ramirez bellowed somewhere down on the wall. The FOB had become a fortress under siege. The breach. For an hour it was chaos. Gunfire. Explosions. The scream of wounded men carried through the dust. Keller fired until his barrel smoked, then swapped rifles with a dead man and kept firing. And then came the breach. An RPG slammed into the gate, tearing it open in a shower of fire and twisted metal. Insurgents poured through, screaming war cries, firing wildly. Gate breach. Gate breach, the radio crackled. Keller's stomach dropped. If they broke through, the FOB would fall. Ramirez's voice thundered over the chaos. Bravo squad. To the gate. Now. The gate. Keller sprinted, boots slipping in blood and dirt, rifle tight in his hands. Holt was right beside him, her med kit bouncing against her back. Dwyer came behind, saw roaring on the move. The gate was a nightmare. Smoke and flames, tracers cutting through the air, men fighting hand to hand in the breach. Keller saw one insurgent drive a knife into a private's chest, only to be cut down by a burst of fire. Keller raised his rifle and dropped 2 more, his trigger finger numb from firing. Holt ducked behind cover, dragging wounded men to safety, her hands red to the wrists. Specialist. Ramirez shouted, pointing. Keller turned and froze. The Scorpion stood in the breach. Black robes. AK in hand. Calm, steady as if he owned the battlefield. His men swarmed around him, pouring into the FOB. Their eyes met again. The same calm look as before. Like this was inevitable. The charge. Ramirez didn't hesitate. With me. He charged. Keller followed, lungs burning, heart hammering. Bullets zipped past, grenades boomed. Dwyer laid down suppressing fire, mowing down fighters as they poured through. The Scorpion raised his rifle and fired. Ramirez stumbled, hit in the chest. He fell hard, gasping, armor cracked. Ramirez! Keller screamed. He dove beside his sergeant, dragging him into cover. Blood poured through the cracks in the plate. Keep fighting, Ramirez wheezed, his eyes wide with pain. Don't let him through. Keller's throat closed, but he nodded. He had no choice. He grabbed Ramirez's radio and called it in. Talk. This is Bravo 2-3. Gate is breached. We need immediate QRF and air support or we're done. Static. Then, hold on. Birds inbound. 10 mics. 10 minutes. They had to survive 10 minutes. Close quarters. The breach turned into a slaughterhouse. Insurgents and soldiers clashed in the dust and fire, rifles abandoned for knives, fists, anything that killed. Keller's rifle clicked dry. He swung it like a bat, smashing an insurgent in the face. Another lunged with a blade. Keller caught his wrist, twisted, drove the knife into the man's throat. Blood sprayed hot. Keller staggered back, gasping. His hands shook, but he kept moving. Beside him, Dwyer was a machine, the saw chewing through belt after belt. Come on, you bastards. Who's next? He roared, laughter wild in his throat. And Holt was everywhere. Dragging wounded, patching arteries, shoving tourniquets into spurting wounds, all while bullets snapped inches from her head. Her face was streaked with blood, her eyes blazing. She was the only reason half their squad was still alive. Ramirez's last order. Keller crawled back to Ramirez. The sergeant's breaths were shallow, his skin gray. Keller, he rasped. I'm here, Sarge. Ramirez's hand clutched his sleeve with surprising strength. Your squad lead now. Do you hear me? Keller froze. What? No. Do you hear me? Ramirez barked, even with blood filling his mouth. Yes, Sarge. Then hold the gate. No matter what. His hand fell limp. His eyes went glassy. Keller's chest caved. Ramirez, the rock, the unbreakable wall, was gone. But there was no time to grieve. He had men depending on him. The stand. Keller. Dwyer shouted over the gunfire. What now? Keller's mind raced. He could pull back, regroup deeper in the FOB. But if the insurgents held the gate when reinforcements arrived, they'd flood inside. The FOB would fall. He heard Ramirez's voice in his head. Hold the gate. No matter what. Keller clenched his jaw. We hold here, he shouted. Nobody gets past US. The squad roared in answer. They dug in, firing from cover, throwing grenades, fighting with everything they had left. Keller picked up Ramirez's M4, the weapon still warm. He planted himself at the breach and fired until his arms shook, until the smoke burned his lungs, until the ground was slick with blood. He wasn't fighting for glory. He wasn't fighting for orders. He was fighting because if he stopped, everyone behind him would die. The birds. At last the distant roar came. Apache gunships swept in low, their rotors chopping the night. Flares lit the sky. Rockets streaked into the desert, ripping the insurgent trucks apart in blossoms of fire. The Scorpion's men broke, scattering into the dark. The survivors fled into the mountains, dragging their wounded. But the Scorpion himself, he stood in the chaos, calm as ever. He stared at Keller one last time across the breach. Then he turned and vanished into the smoke. Silence after the storm. The FOB was wrecked. Smoke rose from craters. Bodies lay twisted in the dirt, friend and foe alike. The stench of blood and burned flesh clung to everything. Keller stood in the breach, rifle hanging limp, chest heaving. His hands were red. His ears rang. His eyes burned. Dwyer limped up beside him, face blackened with soot. Well, that sucked. Keller barked a laugh, raw and broken. Then he looked down. Ramirez's body lay at his feet, eyes open to the stars. The sergeant who had led them through hell. Gone. Holt came up, her gloves drenched in blood. She looked at Keller, really looked at him, and nodded once. He trusted you. Don't waste it. Keller nodded back, though his throat was too tight to speak. Cliffhanger. Later, as they buried Ramirez under the hard desert soil, Hensley gave the eulogy. But Keller barely heard the words. He only heard Ramirez's last order echoing in his head. Your squad lead now. Hold the gate. That night, Keller sat alone, staring into the dark mountains where the Scorpion had fled. He knew this wasn't over. The Scorpion wasn't done. He'd be back. And next time Keller would be ready, picking up the mantle. The morning after Ramirez's burial, the FOB felt hollow. Keller sat on the edge of his bunk, still in yesterday's uniform, boots unlaced. His rifle leaned against the wall, Ramirez's name tape tucked into the sling. Sleep had come in flashes, each dream full of smoke, blood, and the sergeant's voice. Across the barracks, Dwyer laced his boots with exaggerated force. So what now, fearless leader? The words stung, but there was no venom. Dwyer's eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. He was hurting just like the rest of them. Keller exhaled. Now we go hunting. Damn right, Holt muttered from her bunk, checking her med kit. That bastard walked away twice. Third time's ours. But beneath the bravado, Keller could feel the unspoken weight. Ramirez had been their anchor. Now every pair of eyes in the squad was on him. The briefing. Captain Hensley's office smelled of stale coffee and map ink. The captain leaned on his desk, tapping a pen against the map spread wide. Intel confirms the Scorpions regrouped here. He circled a valley deep in the mountains. Satellite picked up heat signatures, dug in positions, possible supply cache. This is likely his forward base. He looked up at Keller. Bravo squad will lead the recon. Confirm presence, assess strength. If it's light, take it out. If not, mark it and call for air. Keller swallowed. Just us. You'll have overwatch from Delta platoon on the ridge. But on the ground, yes. Your point. The captain's gaze hardened. Keller. I know Ramirez trusted you. Don't make me regret giving you this. Keller's mouth was dry. Roger that, sir. Into the mountains. The squad moved out before dawn, packs heavy, rifles loaded. The mountains rose ahead, black silhouettes against a pale sky. Dwyer grumbled as he adjusted his saw. You ever notice how every time they say light recon, it turns into a damn suicide run? Shut up, Dwyer, Holt muttered, adjusting her helmet strap. But Keller smirked despite himself. That was Dwyer's role, comic relief when the tension got too thick. Ramirez used to snap at him, but Keller saw the value now. Without that humor, the silence of the mountains might crush them before the enemy even fired a shot. They climbed higher, the air thinning, the sun burning. Every step felt like dragging lead. But Keller forced the pace. If the Scorpion was dug in, they needed surprise. Signs of the enemy. By mid-morning, they reached a narrow ravine. The rocks were scarred with black soot, the smell of burned fuel lingering. Recent campfire, Holt murmured, crouching by the ashes. Still warm. Keller scanned the ridges. The hairs on his neck prickled. They're close. A glint caught his eye, metal flashing against stone. His stomach dropped. Sniper. Down. The crack came a heartbeat later. The round smacked into the dirt where Dwyer had been standing. Bullets rained down from both ridges. The squad scrambled for cover, rocks exploding around them. Contact. Both sides. Keller shouted into the radio. Delta, we need eyes on those shooters. Static answered. No reply. God damn it, Dwyer growled, firing bursts uphill. We're on our own. The first decision. Pinned in the ravine, Keller had seconds to choose. Stay put and they'd be chewed up by snipers. Move uphill and they'd expose themselves to crossfire. His chest tightened. What would Ramirez do? Then he shook his head. No. What do I do? He scanned the ridges. Left side had thicker rocks, better approach. Right side was sharper, barren. Dwyer, suppress right ridge. Holt with me, left flank now. They sprinted, bullets snapping at their heels. Keller dove behind cover, rolled and came up firing. Holt moved beside him, calm under fire, her rifle steady. Together they picked their way uphill, bounding from cover to cover, closing on the shooters. Keller caught sight of one insurgent reloading, leaned out and dropped him with a burst. Another tried to flank Holt, but she put 2 rounds in his chest before he could aim. Within minutes, the left ridge went quiet. Keller keyed his radio again. Delta, where the hell are you? This time, a voice crackled back, panicked. We're in it too. Taking fire from the rear. They knew we were coming. Keller's blood went cold. It was a trap. The push. Leader's call, Holt said, eyes scanning the ridge. We push or we pull back? Keller's mind raced. Pull back and they'd abandon Delta. Push and they risked walking into the Scorpion's kill box. He saw Ramirez's face again, the blood, the order. Hold the gate. Keller clenched his jaw. We push. He signaled Dwyer and the rest. Up and over. Move. The squad scrambled up the ridge, lungs burning, rifles cracking. Insurgents fell back, drawing them deeper. Keller knew it, but he couldn't stop now. If they retreated, the Scorpion would slip away again. into the hornet's nest. They crested the ridge and found themselves staring down into the valley. A sprawling camp spread below, tents, vehicles, heavy weapons. Dozens of fighters moving with purpose. Mortars lined up, ammo stacked in neat rows. And at the center, calm as ever, stood the Scorpion. He looked up as if he'd been waiting for them. Then he raised his hand. The valley erupted. Mortars boomed. Machine guns roared. The hillside around Keller exploded in fire and dirt. Down. Get down. Holt screamed. The squad tumbled into cover, pinned by withering fire. Keller's ears rang, his heart slamming. He'd led them straight into hell. The price? Ammo's low. Dwyer shouted, ripping open his last belt. We can't stay here. Holt yelled, dragging a wounded private behind cover. We'll be shredded. Keller's mind spiraled. He had to call it in. He grabbed the radio, voice hoarse. Talk. This is Bravo 2-3. We've confirmed the Scorpion's base. Heavy enemy presence. Mortars, MGs, at least 50 fighters. We need immediate airstrike. Danger close. Static. Then, copy Bravo 2-3. Fast movers inbound. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes. They'd be dead in 5. Keller clenched his teeth. We need to buy time. He looked at his squad, muddy, bloody, terrified, but still fighting. His family now. His responsibility. Dwyer, Holt, cover fire. Everyone else peel back. Fall to secondary ridge. The squad moved, sprinting under fire, bullets chasing their heels. Dwyer and Holt laid down relentless bursts, then fell back in turn. But not everyone made it. Private Marks caught a round in the throat mid-run. He dropped, clutching, blood spraying. Help him. Keller shouted. Holt slid beside the kid, hands working furiously. But one look at her face told the truth. Too much blood. Too little time. Go, she screamed at Keller. He's gone. Keller's chest caved, but he forced himself to turn away. If they stopped, they'd all die. Fire from the sky. They dug in on the secondary ridge, pinned but alive. Keller's hands shook as he reloaded, each shot fired into the swarm below, just buying seconds. Then the roar came. F-16 screamed overhead, low and fast. Missiles streaked down into the valley, detonating in thunderclaps. Fireballs consumed the camp, tents ripping apart, vehicles exploding. The ground shook with each impact. Fighters scattered, torn apart by shrapnel. The Scorpion's base vanished in a storm of fire and smoke. The squad hunkered down, eyes wide, the sky raining death. And then, silence. The valley smoldered. The camp was gone. But as the smoke cleared, Keller's stomach dropped. Through the haze, he saw a figure limping toward the rocks, black robes singed but alive. The Scorpion. Still alive. Cliffhanger. The squad collapsed on the ridge, battered and broken, staring down at the destruction. Dwyer spat blood and muttered, "If that son of a bitch survives that, he's the devil himself." Keller didn't answer. He just stared at the black-robed figure fading into the rocks, slipping away again. He'd led them into hell, lost good men, and still hadn't finished it. But next time, he swore he wouldn't miss. The wait. The FOB was quieter now, too quiet. The walls still bore scars from the last assault. Chunks of concrete missing, black burns across the gate. Soldiers patched holes with sandbags, welded scrap, laid fresh barbed wire. Inside, Keller sat in the mess hall with untouched chow growing cold in front of him. Holt sat across, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, staring at nothing. Dwyer sat nearby, chewing with mechanical rhythm, jaw set. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Holt said softly, "Marks was just a kid." Keller nodded. The image of Marks choking on his own blood haunted him. Another ghost to carry. Dwyer slammed his tray down. "Enough. We can sit here mourning or we can end this bastard. The Scorpion's still out there. You saw him. I saw him. We kill him or he'll keep coming." Holt looked at Keller. "Your call. You're the leader now." The weight pressed down on him again. But this time he didn't hesitate. "We go after him. The hunt begins." Intel painted a picture. The Scorpion had fled deeper into the mountains, toward an abandoned Soviet fort from the 1980s. Satellite images showed movement, fortifications, heat signatures. Hensley's orders were blunt. Terminate him. No more half measures. You'll have one squad of Rangers for support, but you're still point. This is your fight, Keller. Finish it. That night, as they loaded up, Holt caught Keller's arm. "Don't let him make you reckless." Keller met her eyes. "I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this so no more kids end up in cages." She searched his face, then nodded. "Into the wolf's den." The convoy dropped them miles from the target. From there, it was boots and silence, moving under a starless sky. The air was cold, sharp enough to bite. By dawn, the Soviet fort rose ahead, a scar of gray concrete and rusted steel clinging to the mountainside. Broken watchtowers. Crumbling walls. But the movement inside was alive and lethal. Dwyer whistled low. Looks like Dracula's summer home. Keller smirked despite himself. Let's go knock. First contact. They approached through a dried riverbed, weapons tight. The Rangers spread wide, covering flanks. The first shots came from the towers. Snipers cracked, rounds sparking off stone. The squad dove into cover. Suppress those towers, Keller ordered. Dwyer's saw thundered, tracers ripping through the crumbling concrete. Holt steadied her rifle, dropping one sniper with a clean shot. The Rangers fired at fours, blasting chunks out of the towers. Within minutes, the snipers were silent. Move up, Keller yelled. They stormed the outer wall, grenades booming, rifles cracking. Insurgents poured out, firing from every doorway and window. It was chaos, dust, smoke, the smell of cordite. Keller fought like a man possessed, each shot purposeful, each step forward a refusal to give ground. Inside the fort, the interior was a labyrinth of broken halls and dark rooms. Shadows moved everywhere, muzzle flashes lighting the walls. Clear left. Holt shouted, sweeping her sector. Frag out. Dwyer bellowed, lobbing a grenade into a stairwell. The blast shook the concrete, screams echoing. Keller led from the front, every decision instant, every choice heavy with consequence. He didn't think anymore. He acted. And always, in the back of his mind, he felt it, the Scorpion was here. Waiting. The trap. They reached the central courtyard, open to the gray sky above. For a moment it was silent. Too silent. Keller's gut twisted. Stay sharp. The ground erupted. Mortars slammed into the courtyard, fire and shrapnel tearing through their formation. Rangers went down screaming. Keller was thrown to the ground, ears ringing, chest burning. Through the haze, insurgents swarmed from every doorway, rifles blazing. Ambush. Dwyer roared, firing wildly. Keller scrambled up, dragging Holt behind cover as bullets chewed the stone. His vision blurred, but he fought it down. They couldn't break here. Hold the line, he shouted, echoing Ramirez's words. They fought like cornered animals, every round a prayer. Holt patched wounds under fire, her hands steady even as bullets snapped past. Dwyer laughed like a madman, mowing down waves with the saw. But the insurgents kept coming. And then, through the smoke, he appeared. The Scorpion. The face of the enemy. He stepped into the courtyard calm as ever, robes torn, rifle in hand. His eyes locked on Keller. For a moment, the battle blurred. It was just the two of them. Predator and prey. The Scorpion raised his hand and his fighters fell back slightly, giving them space. Like he wanted this fight. Keller stood, chest heaving, rifle ready. This ends now, he muttered. The Scorpion smiled faintly. Then he raised his weapon. The duel. The world narrowed to gunfire. Keller and the Scorpion traded shots, ducking behind rubble, moving, firing. Each man came within inches of death with every exchange. The Scorpion was skilled, precise, calm under fire. But Keller had something he didn't: rage, loss, and the memory of every man who had died because of him. A round grazed Keller's arm, burning hot. He gritted his teeth, ignored the pain, pressed forward. He closed the distance, firing until his rifle clicked empty. The Scorpion rushed him, blade flashing. They collided in the dirt, grappling, fists flying, knife slashing. Keller felt steel slice across his ribs, hot blood soaking his uniform. He roared, drove his elbow into the Scorpion's face, felt bone crack. The knife came up again. Keller caught the wrist, twisted, slammed it down. The blade skittered across the stone. With a final surge, Keller drove his fist into the Scorpion's throat. The man choked, staggered, and Keller snatched the knife, driving it home. The Scorpion gasped, eyes wide, blood spilling. For the first time his calm cracked. And then he fell. Aftermath. The courtyard went silent. The insurgents who remained froze, eyes wide, then scattered into the shadows. Dwyer staggered over, smoke curling from his saw. Holy hell. You did it. Keller stood over the Scorpion's body, chest heaving, blood soaking his side. He felt no triumph. Only exhaustion. Holt knelt beside him, hands already on his wound. Stay with me, Keller. Don't you dare check out now. He winced but managed to grin. Guess I'm not as pretty as I used to be. She snorted. You were never pretty. For the first time in weeks they both laughed. Extraction. The Rangers secured the fort, planting charges to level what remained. Black smoke rose into the sky as helicopters thundered in. Keller was loaded onto a bird, Holt at his side, her hand pressed firm against his wound. Dwyer slumped across from him, grinning through a busted lip. As the fort shrank beneath them, Keller stared at the body bag being loaded onto another chopper. The Scorpion. Finally finished. Or was he? The mystery. Back at the FOB, command debriefed them. Medals were hinted at. Words like decisive victory were thrown around. But Keller couldn't shake the unease. 2 days later, Intel reported intercepted chatter. A new voice had risen among the insurgents. Come, Colt. Calling himself the Scorpion. Keller's blood ran cold. The man he killed, was he the Scorpion at all? Or just another mask? Closing. That night, Keller sat on the wall, looking out at the endless desert. Holt joined him, her scar glinting in the moonlight. You did good, she said softly. Did I? Keller murmured. Or did I just make room for the next one? She didn't answer. She just sat with him, silent, steady. And for the first time, Keller let himself breathe. He didn't know what came next. Maybe more battles. Maybe more scars. But he knew one thing. He wasn't just following orders anymore. He was leading. And whatever came, he'd face it head on. The end.